So in the 1800s, people were genuinely afraid of being buried alive, not in some sort of horror movie kind of way, but a very practical way. Medical science just wasn't very great at declaring death. There was no heart rate monitors, there were no brain scans. Sometimes doctors were just sort of working off whether you had a shallow pulse or weak breathing, and they were just sort of waiting. And there were enough real cases, or at least relatively believable ones, of people waking up during wakes or after burial that it made it a very justifiable fear in the public eye. It even had a name.
Taphophobia.
I don't know how to say it, but it's the fear of premature burial. So people tried to solve this problem by having these delayed burials. They would hold very long wakes. Some people put instructions in their wills actually asking for their veins to be cut or their hearts to be pierced or sometimes their head to be cut off just to be completely sure. And I do just want to add here that I've heard that this is where the name wake, like a wake, comes from, to give people enough time to wake up. But actually the term wake comes from an old Celtic tradition. That's W-A-C-U, I think weku, which means to stand guard, namely against evil spirits, but whatever. People were concerned enough about being buried alive that these safety coffins became really popular. These were coffins outfitted with breathing tubes, they had flag systems, they had little bells inside of the coffin should you wake up and you can ring it. And some wealthy families would actually hire night watchmen to stand by the grave and listen for the bells, and that's where the term Saved by the Bell comes from. And there was something else that I kept coming across while I was looking into this that I found really interesting that's semi-related. Around that same time, post-mortem photography became really common, taking pictures with your dead loved ones. And photography back then was really expensive. And for many families, a photograph taken after death was the only image they'd ever have of that loved one, especially how new photography was at that time. But it also served as the purpose, sort of like this post-mortem, before burial, during these extended wakes, they take these photos and the body would be dressed, posed, sometimes made to look asleep, sometimes it would be made to look alive, but most importantly, it was sort of a witness. The photography became part of the broader process of confirmation, another way to be certain that the death had actually occurred. And by the early 1900s, this had all faded away because medicine improved and embalming became really popular, but death and also death moved to hospitals and photography became really cheap. But death became less visible, sort of ironically. And that brief period of history where people were very thoughtful in documenting of death, not because they were obsessed with death, but because they were trying very carefully not to get it wrong. Just two things that I found kind of interesting.